Hello everyone, today we have a quick news update on Shenmue 3, as it has been brought to our attention by Cade Onder, who is the editor-in-chief of Gamezone.com, that Shenmue 3 will indeed be playable at E3, at the very least for the press. And it's been pretty quiet since the reboot conference for Shenmue 3, but this I thought was worth talking about because I've seen some varied reactions, and I wanted to go over a few things. So the first off is it is only been said by him that it's playable by the press. He doesn't know, anything official from them if it's playable publicly on the show floor, but a lot of people are getting a little worried that it won't be and what that might mean if that's a negative. But I don't think that's a big deal, and honestly, I'm almost betting on it probably not being playable by the public on the show floor for a few reasons, and not because the game isn't coming on time or delayed or anything like that, but there's a few factors that are involved here. For one, you always get, when a game is getting gameplay and, all the websites, IGN, GameSpot, Giant Bomb, etc., are out there playing the game, there's a ton of footage, there's a ton of impressions, so it's not like they're hiding the game. And what also that usually means is you're probably getting a trailer at or around E3 for Shenmue 3. Probably a big one, and if there's going to be gameplay demos, even if it's just for the press, I'm pretty confident with it being, just a little over 2 months after E3 the game will launch. I bet we're getting that bigger, meaty gameplay trailer a lot of people have been anticipating. I've said it multiple times when I've done reactions to some of the Shenmue 3 footage we've seen and all that, has been, I really want a gameplay demo seeing Rio walking around town, that type of thing, like a day in the life, really seeing that type of gameplay, not just quick cuts of combat, stuff like that. And those reboot screenshots really kind of showed that. So I imagine that's kind of what the press will play. But what I wanted to mention is there's a few factors, if the game isn't playable on the show floor, that are kind of out of, I guess, the developer's hands, Yu Suzuki's hands, that could relate to it not being on the show floor, even if the game was technically capable of doing so. First off, remember this game was announced as, PS4 and PC, so it is not on another console, and, well, look at that, Sony's not having an E3 conference this year. So you have Nintendo with their digital event, and Microsoft as the only, console holder with a big live press conference. So, obviously Shenmue 3 can't be shown in those conferences, because it's not going to be on those platforms. So, what that also means is usually when you have a marketing deal or something with a game, those are where the games will show up on the show floor in their booths. So if someone has a marketing deal with Microsoft, the game is playable in the Xbox booth at E3. With Sony, not just saying they have a conference, not just saying they're skipping out on a conference, but also talking about skipping E3 entirely, there isn't going to be a PlayStation booth for that to be an option anyway. And then you also have to factor in Deep Silver isn't as big, they're pretty big, but not as big of a publisher, so booth space might actually be an issue for Shenmue 3, which, while having a dedicated following, is still a smaller scale title compared to a lot of the stuff you'll see at E3. And a lot of these smaller games at E3, like indie games, like I said, will be shown in booths that have a big publisher push behind them. So if Microsoft really wants to highlight an indie game, it'll be at their booth. And that's what Sony's done in the past, but of course this year that's not happening. But if there isn't an obvious, let's say, spot for it for the public on the show floor, the question becomes, well, if you think we're getting a trailer, what does that mean? There's no chance of a trailer being in a Sony press conference, so does that affect the possibility of getting one? And I'd say no, because a lot of companies have put out trailers around E3, and a lot of games, in fact, get announced before E3 in like the last few weeks leading up to it, to try to get ahead and have their own news day. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Shenmue 3 just release a trailer either a little before E3 or potentially a little after, let's say give or take 3 weeks either direction. And it will be kind of their E3 trailer in a sense, but not necessarily at E3. I think there also is the possibility of us getting a big gameplay trailer, if this is still happening, at maybe the PC Gamer show. So PCGamer.com has done an E3 presentation. Of course, that's run by a magazine. It's not a platform holder. You know, there's no official PC conference. Valve doesn't have a conference for Steam or anything like that. But PC Gamer, as a magazine, has done a show themselves where they invite people up and show off new stuff. So potentially with Shenmue 3 also coming to PC, maybe there's a chance of that being a spot where either a trailer is shown, or who knows, maybe Yu Suzuki is at E3 and gets an interview on stage at their presentation if they do one again. Obviously, is not a firm platform holder. I don't know. They're not necessarily forced to do one or anything, so we don't know for sure. But I could see that being a possibility, because a lot of people do kind of forget sometimes that Shenmue 3 is coming to PC. So that is definitely an avenue as well. And they have kind of done a more like talk show style host, sit on the desk, you know, sit by a desk, sit in a chair, have a little chat, and then show trailers. That's been kind of their thing, how they've ran their shows. So again, the possibility of Yu Suzuki or somebody showing up in a spot like that kind of makes some sense to me. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. There also is worth remembering that there is supposed to be a backer demo that is coming out at some point, and it wouldn't surprise me if the E3 demo that the press plays, even if the public doesn't at that time, if a short while after, let's say within the month or so, if that same E3 demo is basically repurposed as the backer demo. I think that actually is a pretty high possibility as well. So yeah, I think this is overall very good news that the game is confirmed to be getting playable at E3 by the press at the very least, which means a ton of footage, a ton of impressions and stuff like that, and all of this always coincides with the trailer. If it's playable at E3 in that capacity, there'll be a trailer released around E3 at the very least. So, like I said, I've seen some negativity, and I just kind of wanted to get out there and say, if any thought of this, possibly this gameplay demo at E3 not being a public demo on the show floor as like a very scary kind of doom and gloom thing, I completely disagree. I don't think that's that big of a deal at all. And it's important to remember, even if you're a big Shenmue fan, Shenmue 3 is a big deal in this scale of video games because of its kind of status, this game that people have been dreaming of for a long time, and this constant chatter. It was always one of those, you know, dream announcement games. Of course, you know, going back to it and Final Fantasy VII Remake being announced at the same time, you know, things that people always talked about. But it's still not a, you know, the massive AAA release that like the original Shenmue was or anything. So it's not necessarily obvious that, oh, it's the type of game that needs to be on the show floor and will be pushed and highlighted in the way that your standard big Nintendo game or Call of Duty or whatever would be. And it doesn't necessarily need that, because at the end of the day, a lot of the people that are just public, random people going to E3, that's still a pretty small scale number, not necessarily the biggest deal. It's not like Shenmue 3 won't get any exposure. It will get more by having big press impressions at E3 and doing interviews and making the rounds and having a trailer around the show. That's a bigger deal than, you know, if only people with a badge can play, with a press badge can play. That doesn't really hurt the game at all, I don't think, in terms of promotion or anything. So I wouldn't worry about that. I think overall it should be considered a total positive that the game is going to be playable by the press. And again, it could be on the show floor. We just don't know. A lot of people are expecting it not to, based off this comment, but we don't know for sure. And even if it's not, like I said, I don't think it's a huge deal. So yeah, that's what we have for now. If you have any thoughts on Shenmue 3 being playable by the press, and any thoughts on what you'd like to see out of that gameplay demo, even if it's not made public, what are you hoping to get impression-wise? Some of the raw gameplay, what type of gameplay are you looking to see? I've said before, I really just want to see Ryo kind of going around town, going into arcades, buying, selling, kind of the things we saw in the reboot screenshots. I want to see that live, basically, and I would be really happy. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.